There we go. All right, so hello everybody. My name is Broderick Turner. I am currently an assistant professor of marketing at Virginia Tech, as well as a fellow with the Society for the Institute for Business and Global Society at Harvard Business School, where I'm in residence for the next year or so. And I also am the co-founder of the Technology, Race, and Prejudice Lab. We're a working lab group. I think we're up to about 25 research active academics who show up every week to discuss this intersection of technology, race, and prejudice. And so I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. And Jenny, you can see the screen? We're good?
Yes.
Great. So we're going to start today with the basic question, right? Which is AI racist? Now, I want to lay some ground terminology so we're on the same page, which is when I'm saying AI, we're referring to basically any product that uses past data, right? Has rules that run simultaneously that leads to some outcome. So we can throw in supervised or unsupervised machine learning. We can throw in even simpler AI products. We can go generative art. We can go large language models, things that take past data, categorize that past data, and have rules that run simultaneously. That's what we're going to say when we say AI. We're not talking about some future, Rosie the robot, or like Skynet from the Terminator, or the machines from the Matrix, right? We're talking about the AI that currently exists today. Now, as a shameless plug, if this is the type of work that interests you, or if this is something that excites you as an academic, please go to jointhetrap.com. We have a sign-up form. Is this something that interests you as a company or a business person that's interested in understanding how AI or how technology and race might impact your company? Also, go to jointhetrap.com. We have a sign-up sheet, and we love to talk to you, right? We're really doing our best to work at this intersection and really start to understand things. So our goal for today is we're going to do three things. The first is that we're going to go over how we are starting to think about AI in the Trap Lab, and I'm going to leave you with two relatively straightforward or simple thought models to use when you're dealing with AI. In part two, we're going to play around with these thought models and see, for some early research stuff, what might be happening here, and how these models might help us think about what's going on. And then the last part, we're going to talk about what we can do, right? What we can do as academics if we want to integrate this work into our research, and what we can do as business leaders, right? If we're going to bring AI products essentially into our companies that deal with other people. So I'm going to start with the basic question, right? And the question that was raised is AI racist? So I'm going to give you the answer now, and if you only wanted the answer and you want to leave after that, feel free to go. So the answer is no. AI is not racist because AI is a tool, right? That's like saying, is a hammer racist, right? Is a screwdriver racist? No. Can it be used in a racist way? 100%, right? And if it's a reflection of past data in humans, right, then humans themselves can be racist and I froze. Can be racist and sexist and anti-queer, right? And if we build systems and build products around this idea that these are a reflection of human beings, yes, in that way, AI can be racist. But as a tool, it's a tool, all right? And so we're going to dig in today with some models that help us think about how to think about AI. Now, let's start with the building blocks. The building blocks as I see it, of AI is this, right? If you took 10th grade algebra, or you graduated high school, you saw y equals mx plus b, right? This is our basic linear regression, where y is some outcome, b is our y-intercept, or we can call it an error term, and then mx is, x is your input, and m is the importance, right, or the slope that goes onto that input, right? And so if I wanted to build an AI system that was like, should we give Broderick a raise, right? If I'm designing the system, then that M is going to be very high, and that X will be, I don't know, Broderick published a paper, right? So chances of giving Broderick a raise, very high, because I'm going to put a lot of slope in that M, right? Now, it gets slightly more complicated when we add in a bunch of MXs, all right? But we can think about this just a basic term, that this M is a parameter, right? So when you read about these AI models and they say it's a 22 billion parameter model, it really just means it has a bunch of inputs, and each of those inputs has some weight on it, some slope, right? Now, this parameter is interesting because this parameter, as I see it, is just humans, right? Now, it's going to be different humans, but we're going to break down who the humans are in this M. So I think about this M as commodified human labor. Training data, that we talk about past data, is human labor. Categorization is human labor. So if I say, what is this? And someone says, this is paper, right? That's categorization. Somebody had to tell me this is paper. The rules that then connect the categorization, the training data, some output, right? That's human labor. And then user feedback, the people on this call, the people that deal with the end of the algorithm. When we talk about the algorithm line, right? Are you above the line? Did you design the algorithm? Or are you below the line? Are you being impacted by the algorithm, right? But even being impacted, dealing with it, that is work on your end, right? That is human labor that goes into this. And so we started to think about how each part of this and the humans that are in each of these triangles, right? How those impact each other. Now, I was trained when I was doing my PhD as a behavioral scientist or like a social psychologist. And so I approach this work with AI from a similar view, which is that I'm going to look inside of each part of this and ask, who are the humans there, all right? And then given that, what biases might they have? How do they approach problems? And then how does that interact with the other humans that are the users, or the humans that were in the data, or the humans that did the categorization, the humans that did the rules? I want to pause here before I start going any further and see if there are any questions in the chat. I see no questions yet, so either I am super clear, all right? Or this is boring, and I'm going to go with clear. All right, so let's go through each part of this. So first, data, right? Now, data is humans, right? Data is us. It is the detritus that we leave behind as we move through the world. It is the text that you sent to your friend, right? It is the post that you put on Facebook. It is the number that you just called, right? Like all of this is data, but it's all data that you did. It's human work for the most part. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we can collect data. So let's use an example. Anyone here familiar with these large language models? Anyone heard of ChatGPT? Okay, so in the chat, what is the data that goes into ChatGPT as they're training these algorithms? What's the data? Any ideas? No wrong answers. I mean, there's some really wrong answers, but put it in the chat if you have any ideas. I'm seeing social media. Thank you. Thank you. Internet data. Perfect. Yes. Internet. Thank you. Yes. All right. So a lot of companies use the internet for training data, right? Makes sense to me because there's so much data there. And if we're going to train a model that understands human speech and context and text, then the internet makes a lot of sense to get data from. There's an issue though, right? So we're going to use some market logic to think about which humans might actually get sucked into the data, right? Because if I'm trying to get a billion parameter model, right? I need billions of pieces of information. If I had to pay for all of that information, I'd never be able to train a model because it will be really expensive, right? That's why these companies steal. And so like when we're thinking about this, they're taking the data from the free parts of the internet. What is free on the internet? Again, you put in the chat. Any ideas? What's free on the internet? Comments, information, knowledge. Yes. Social media also free as this is my favorite musical.
Finally, I get to teach a whole lesson all by myself. And I'm gonna teach something relevant, something modern. The internet. The internet is really, really great. For porn. Got a fast connection, so I don't have to wait. For porn. Always some new sites. For porn. Browse all day and night. For porn. It's live surfing at the speed of light. For porn. The internet is for porn. The internet is for porn. Why do you think the net was born? Porn, porn.
All right. So there's a lot of porn on the internet, right? And so what happens is that, like, if we think about what's free on the internet, all right? Someone, I think Jenny Young said, comments are free on the internet, but who leaves comments on the internet, right? Most people that go to social media rarely comment. The people that do comment tend to leave angrier, more divisive comments. So if we're going to build a system from data of comments, it's probably going to be angrier. Or if we're going to think about how we describe women, right? On the internet, if porn is free on the internet, and there's a lot of porn, right? Then the way that we describe women will be pornier, right? Same thing with propaganda. So Breitbart, completely free. You can read unlimited articles on Breitbart. However, you know, as a grad student for many years who liked the New York Times and could not afford it, if I read 2 or 3 articles on the New York Times, I get a window that pops up that says, you need to pay me money to read any more articles. And now if I'm going to scrape the internet, right, for all of this possible data, am I going to get more data from Breitbart or from the New York Times, right? One of them is free, one of them is not. Now, my researchers that are on the call that have published papers, how much does it cost, like a person that's not at a university, to get access to one of your papers? It's not like free. And so you spent thousands of dollars, thousands of man hours, right? Coming up and like creating new knowledge, right? Getting as close as possible to whatever truth is. And then it's locked behind a paywall. So if I'm going to train on this data, I'm going to miss out on the papers that you've published, right? I'm going to miss out on Aziza Jones's work. This is not going to happen, right? Because it's behind a paywall, I'm not going to train on it. So that means that the data already is going to have some interesting and strange human biases, all right? So those are our first set of humans. Next, we want to think about categorization, right? So as I take in all of this data, I have to say what the data is, all right? Now, a lot of companies are using various methods to categorize data, but today, at least, it's mostly human beings doing that work of categorization. Now, some of that work is people categorizing themselves. So anyone here ever posted anything to Instagram? And when you post to Instagram, if you leave a tag or a hashtag or you describe what's happening, you've done the work of categorizing the image, right? And we can think about how these categorizers, if they're self-categorization or others, how this might change the output. The other place that a lot of categorization happens is actually being outsourced to countries where labor is relatively inexpensive compared to the US. So we have essentially categorization farms out of the Philippines, in India, in Kenya, right? Now, each of those places they're categorizing data, right, will have their own cultural understanding, their own cultural biases, and that too will feed into the system, right? And so I want to think about like this categorization that's done by users themselves or outside categorizers. So in the chat real quick, I'm gonna show you a picture. And I want you to say how you would categorize the image. What descriptors would you use for the following image? Put it in the chat. I have thick skin. All right, I see adult male, yes. All right, super fly dude, agreed, Jared. Furry, thank you, Ilya. Smiling hairstyles, right. So if smiling person with furry jacket, 100%, right? And so if I am building this on these categorizations, right, that you've categorized as a picture of me, right? It might be different than if I categorize myself, which is just an extremely handsome man in a cool coat, right? Like clearly there's going to be slightly different, right? I'm going to say I'm extremely handsome, right? You might not say the same thing. And so if I'm building a system from these categorizations, that self-categorization might be different than categorization of others. We'll talk about how this might be important in some research that we're currently doing, how this difference in categorization, how we can start to tease this apart as we are understanding how these systems work. All right, next part is the rules, right? Someone has to set the rules for these systems, right? Someone has to say that these are the categorizations that matter, right? Someone has to say that this is how important this input is, right? Now, some of that's going to be unsupervised, but a lot of that is supervised learning where someone has coded, this matters this much, this matters this much, or in an unsupervised system, like here are rules to decide what matters. Now, if we think about who sets the rules for AI, we can think about this as our developers. But then developers will have their own cultural understanding, their own biases. And again, as a behavioral scientist, a social psychologist, or a sociologist, people that work with humans like can start to understand how those biases might impact these other parts of these triangles. So I'm gonna show you a quick picture. And I'll get to your question in a second, Aziza. Who are the people in this picture? Any ideas? Who are these folks? You'll notice there is one genius baby here. Ebon, yes, these are AI developers, all right? This is actually, I think, an early team photo for the OpenAI team. Now, just looking at this picture, who's not here? Or who is here? So like we can put this in the chat. Let's describe who is here and what biases might these people hold. All right, I love these answers. I love these answers. Right, so let's go through some of these answers. Aziza says not a single darker skinned person. Yeah, so it's not to say that these people are going to be racist because there are no Black people there, right? It's just to say that that experience might not be in the room, right? Well-educated people. So if we remember some of the work from social psychology on WEIRD, Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, right, where most of our participants have come from, if we're building systems on weird rules from weird people, right, then we might get some weird outcomes. The thing about mostly younger as well is also 100% right, right? And so I know someone right now that's working on some work that looks at the output of generative AI in terms of age, and it tends to be very young and like kind of misses older people completely. And that could be a function of the data that's going in, the rules that folks are setting, or the categorization, right? And so like this is important to think about because like if these are the folks setting the rules, then their biases will matter, right? So you'll notice if you use ChatGPT, if you try to get it to say anything political, right? It gives you kind of a centrist to neoliberal take on most things, or just says, I don't do this, and or et cetera, right? And so some of that is just, those are the people in the room. It's well-educated, higher SES folks that work with computers, right? They're gonna have their own biases, not good or bad, right? I don't put a moral judgment on the way that they see the world. It's just that the way they see the world is gonna have an impact on each part of that pyramid, all right? And then I want to answer this question. Aziza said, for the categorization standpoint in the rules, can this also be AI? I'm thinking of machine learning. Over time, can't AI learn to categorize even if not inputted the information? Can it learn to identify a latent construct that whatever is trying to find, like who the optimal demographic is to pitch an MLM scheme to? That's a tough question because the answer is basically no. It's not that it's learning, right, and like remembering things, but can targeting get better? 100%, right? And so often what happens is that we assume that these things are like sentient and learning, but they're relatively simple in terms of the math that goes under it, right? So it's not that it's learning and remembering, it's just that the specifications of the model can get better, right? And also sometimes people are unclear about what's being specified in the model. There's some work that some folks are doing here at HBS. Ayelet Israeli, I'm drawing a blank on the name of her co-author right now, but they have this work in PNAS on this thing they call the BEAT model, which is basically the idea that bias can get embedded inside of AI systems, but you can use some of this knowledge about what the AI knows to basically de-bias some of the outcomes. I have at the end, I'm leaving references, and they're references in the website we have up. All right. Last piece of humans in this pyramid is our users, right? So this is you. So this is the people that actually end up like interacting with these AI products, right? And for better or worse, right? Like they're going to be the ones that say this works or doesn't work, right? They'll be the ones that may experience trauma, right? This is for social categorization stuff on AI, this is how people learn, right? Or how AI learns is to say, hey, this hurt my feelings, change this, right? Or in the case of self-driving cars, right? If it crashes into the wall, then you added data to the system to make eventual AI driving more successful. This is why I refuse to be in the test set for that, right? So we can think about how these biases from the data, from the categorization, from the rules might impact users. So I hang out at HBS now. We're going to do a quick like nano case study, right? Which is why do police and principals hate the hate-based AI? So just a quick background. I was doing some consulting work with a company that is working on a transcription product that basically takes available transcriptions from police interactions or inside of classrooms or like recording interactions so that they can highlight like which videos or which teachers that police captains or principals should go and talk to, right? So if it has a bunch of, say, video footage, right? The idea is that this thing can find the right words and transcription for something that might be bad, right? Or something that could be really good we want to go highlight, right? And so something that they built into the system was the ability for the AI to basically highlight whether or not there was hate speech, right? Is there hate speech present? And to do this, they used a database from an organization called hatebase.org. Right now, hatebase.org, what they do is they're essentially volunteer categorizers that track hate on the internet. Right, so they were the people that figured out that the OK sign now was like a white supremacist sign. Right, they track the words on the internet that get associated with like really negative things about Black people or queer people or like anyone that's different from some norm. Now, these are volunteer coders, right? And so they were having this issue is that these principals and these police captains, they would use this product, they would find the video they want to watch, right? Or the AI says, watch this video, or AI says, check this teacher, or check this transcription from this classroom. And they use it for a week and they stop using it, right? And they couldn't figure out why they had stopped using this product they had spent all this money on. Now, I might have gave the game away a little bit here. What do you think happened, right? Why were these folks dropping out? Like, why was this AI failing with these users? All right, Nate Hill said didn't like the results. What results were they getting, Nate Hill, they didn't like? All right, so I gave y'all a hint there. The categorizers were volunteer categorizers on the internet categorizing hate speech. Who were those people? Who has the time to volunteer their time to categorize hate speech? Who might those people look like? Who might those people be? Teenagers? That would actually be great if that were the case. Retirees, Eric is really close. Is basically like retirees. Dennis said, not the scientists that study this stuff 100%. Chris said going to get a teenager volunteer. All right. Turns out it tends to be older, whiter, more liberal, more urban folks that are doing this work, right? And Ebon said either the targets of speech or other hateful people. Not really, right? These are people that are categorizing words on their own time that they think are hate words. Now, there's an issue here, is that for retirees that are maybe slightly whiter and wealthier, that some words may sound like hate to them, but aren't actually hate. So here's an example, all right? And this is the aha, is that there are two versions of this word. That one ends in A, one ends in ER. Now, the one that ends in ER, clearly hate, right? That is a hateful word that no one says unless they are trying to say something hateful. The one that ends in A, though, is different, right? The one that ends in A could mean buddy, friend. The one that ends in A is the one that gets wrapped in rap songs, right? So when people say they use the N-word in rap songs, sort of, they use the N-word that ends in A in rap songs, right? And so if I built a system that categorizes hate speech and treats those two words the same, which is what this was doing, because it was a binary categorization, then I'm going to pull out videos or pull out transcriptions that are relatively innocuous given the users, right? So in a policing context, most police technology gets sold to Black and brown communities first, right? And the largest users of police technology are in Black and brown communities. So if I'm going to pull up some police interaction and the N-word that ends in A is getting used, probably not bad, all right? Or it's not hateful necessarily. Same thing in classroom. Do some research on education, and education, at least public education in the US, is pretty Black and brown, right, in terms of students. And so if I'm pulling up students that are saying NIGGA, maybe it's annoying in the classroom, but likely not hateful in the classroom, right? And so like the issue that we had here, we think about this, right? These users wanted something. They wanted to get the right things to look at. They wanted to look at the right videos. They wanted to get the right transcription, right? And the data was probably fine, right? The data is all the transcription that's there. The data is the data. But if we think about the categorization here, right? The categorization is off because we're categorizing hate speech for things that might not necessarily be hate speech, right? And then we can also think about who was in the room. I'll tell you who wasn't in the room, right? The police officers who used the product or the community members that the police officers interacted with, right, aren't in the room. The students that are in the classroom weren't in the room when they were setting these rules. And so what happens is we have a failure of product because what doesn't get included in this model, right, or that doesn't get considered is the biases that people setting the rules have. Because when they look at this, they go, yeah, this sounds like a hateful word to me. NIGGA and NIGGER are the same. But at someone that had some experience or some lived experience with this might say, I don't think those two words are the same, all right? And then we think about the categorization. The people that are categorizing this, they tend to be retired volunteers, right? They're gonna have different views about what is hateful. And so people that put teenagers should be the ones doing this, I think it's 100% correct, right? The more teens we can get doing this type of work, right, the better. There's a researcher that I've worked with, Desmond Patton. He's at UPenn now, and he's done some work on basically this idea that teenagers have a better sense of what words mean than adults, right? And can basically, if like they get kicked off of social media faster because social media is categorizing what they're saying as hate, and they're like, we're not saying anything hateful, and they're not to them, right? But the people setting the rules are different than the users, right? And the more interaction that we can have across these triangles, right, the better we get to more equitable products, all right? So again, in terms of these thought models, the question that I want people to ask as they're dealing with AI, right, is basically, you know, who are the humans? Who are the humans in the data? Who are the humans in the categorization? Who are the humans in the rules? How do those humans differ, all right? And then ultimately, who are the users, all right? Who are those humans and how they differ from the data, the categorization, the rules, right? Because it'll help us like understand how these things fit together. That's model one, all right? So let's pause here and see if there are any questions about just this basic idea that AI is just human beings, right? It's different humans, but it's human beings all massed together, and we can start to figure out how those interactions work. All right, cool. All right, the next thought model is more of a meta theory, right? Which is that we was ask, what do companies want? And then what are the limits? And so we think about this in two ways, right? Algorithms are motivated. That means that some firm has some goal that they want to happen. They're designing an algorithm to basically get to that behavior. But then every algorithm has mechanical limitations. It's just math, right? And so if I'm going to take all of infinity or 22 billion pieces of data and get to some outcome, right, I'm going to lose a lot of stuff. And so there are mechanical limitations in the math itself. We can think of training data as a limitation, categorization limitation. That triangle essentially sits inside of this limitations box. And we can think about how each of these limitations will move a company away from this consumer behavior goal they have, right? I'm gonna show you some data really quickly from some work that we're trying to get back under review now. So we were doing some work trying to understand how like faces inside of social media feeds might change the way people behaved, right? Does it change how they feel? Does it change the behaviors they make? So we made a bunch of these social media feeds where people saw just angry faces, they saw happy faces, they saw neutral faces. And then we measured their emotional state and we measured three behaviors, right? Did they like this post? Did they share this post? Did they comment on this post, right? Pretty straightforward. And what we find is that when people see happy images, they're slightly happier. People see negative images, angry images, they're in a more negative emotional state. And then in terms of behavior change, there seems to be some change of behavior where people are more likely to like an image as a happy face, more likely to comment on an image as an angry face. They don't really do anything in terms of shares for these faces. And so if we're a company and we want people to like more videos, maybe we design an algorithm that shows happier faces, right? If we're a company and we want to get more comments, we want to extract more comments on the internet, right? Then maybe we design a system that's more likely to show angry faces. And so we wanted to peer into this, right? By saying, like, is there algorithms running on these platforms that are basically deciding what faces get shown? So we set up an algorithm audit. We took 149 models from the Chicago Face Database that had happy faces, angry faces, neutral faces. We uploaded those to Facebook and YouTube, all right? And what it looks like is it was a black screen, then three faces, all static, and then another black screen, right? And these are counterbalanced. So sometimes it's neutral, happy, angry, sometimes angry, happy, neutral, etc. Right? Video looks like this, just so you get a sense. Black screen, 4 seconds of an angry face, 4 seconds of a happy face, then 4 seconds of a neutral face, and then 4 seconds of a black screen, right? And so if companies have some motivation to change your behavior, like might they have some default running in the algorithm, right? That decides to show you an angry face out of the set, a happy face out of the set, a neutral face, or decides to show you no face at all, right? I will let you know part of this, because we don't have time, is that Facebook and YouTube both select a face. So they're clearly trying to show you faces, because we find in old research that faces are salient. People like to see faces, they're not picking the black screen, all right? In terms of this automatic thumbnail that gets selected, some of you have seen this work. In terms of Facebook, you think Facebook selects happy, angry, or neutral faces? And you think YouTube selects happy, angry, or neutral faces? In the chat, get one answer at least. All right, thank you, Nate. Right, thank you. So what we find is that Facebook tends to show angry images, right? YouTube tends to show happy images. This fits kind of with the motivation. Facebook wants more comments. We found some old blog posts about this. And YouTube has built a recommendation algorithm on likes, right? And so it does feel like they want the ones that are most traffic, and there's like 100%, Chris. Traffic matters as well. We don't know how to test that yet, but if you have some ideas, please holler at me. so we can think about this, right? So we see that there are some differences in terms of what these algorithms are selecting, right? But again, we want to think, who are the humans, right? Who are the humans in this data? And so we took pictures from these two test sets, right? These are the test databases that roll out for companies to test their computer vision stuff on. There's one that has 12,000 images. I think it's called the CAT 12,000. There's one at MIT that has 300 or 400. So we had volunteer coders, again, categorize these images for whether or not they saw a person with a phenotypically white face, black face, East Asian, South Asian, or other, right? And what we find is that these test sets, which we can assume are similar to some of the training data, right, are overwhelmingly white, right? And so if we're thinking about how this data, right, difference might impact this outcome of angry, happy, neutral faces, right? How does race and gender then like get matter inside this thumbnail selection? And so what we see is we look here at Black women on YouTube. They basically look different than everyone else, right? And what Timothy Gabru's work has found is that there are less Black women in training sets for computer vision. And so if YouTube has a goal of showing happy faces, let's say that's their motivation, then they're failing here on Black women, right? They're not getting closer to equitable, right? But if we think about what is happening in Facebook, there seems to be some angry white man effect. Now, is this a function of the data that's going in? Is this a function of the categorization? Is this a function of the users themselves? They're just more angry white men on Facebook. I don't have an answer yet. This is going to work, but I'm doing all summer is trying to unpack this. But these are some of the models then that we use to guide this, right? And so we can look at this and ask, like, was AI racist in this instance? No, right? The tool is not racist. But was there a difference in some racial outcome or gender outcome? 100%, right? And so again, like as you are working with this stuff, we're asking you to just think of these models, what the company want, right? And then what are the limitations, and then who are the humans? And so we got 15 minutes. I'm gonna jump into this, right? So some of you are familiar with OpenAI's DALL-E 2. It's a generative art product. And what it does is it takes text, it encodes that text, it breaks it into parts, and then it pulls it back together to make images, right? So we have data, right? There's some categorization of the data, the text comes in and pulls these things together. And so we can ask ourselves with this product, who are the humans, right? In the data categorization rules and users, right? What's the goal and what are the limitations? And so I'm going to show you an image, right? These are generated from ChatGPT. And what I want you to do is, these are all generated from 1 or 2 word phrases. I want you to guess the prompt, right? And then, to yourself, describe what you notice. And then I want to think about what in that box, right? And either of those models might have impacted this outcome. So this is the first one. What was the prompt that created these AI-generated images? 2-word phrase. Very close, Nate. Not quite getting. Couple is one of the words. Boom. All right. Interracial couple. Now, what you might notice here, though, is that this interracial couple, we've done this like 1,000 times, like 900 of those 1,000 times is a Black male and a non-phenotypically Black female. Now, is that the average interracial couple anywhere? No, right? The average interracial couple is a white man with a non-white woman. Now, why might I'm sorry, OpenAI DALL-E 2, why might it be creating interracial couples that have a Black male and a non-Black female? And I'm thinking, or we're thinking, that the answer might be in the data and categorization that goes in. So remember, I played that video for you, the internet is for porn, right? This seems to be some porniness, right, that's getting captured in this word choice. So if I take interracial as a porn category, it's gonna be Black men with non-Black women. And so if I'm making images for interracial, instead of it mirroring what the world actually looks like, we are mirroring what porn looks like. And some of this I know to be the case because some of the early work that came out from some of the generative AI, they had to hire these categorization farms to basically de-porn the output because they kept getting like pornographic images that would pop in for innocuous words, because there's a lot of porn that these images systems trained on. All right, let's try 2 more. What was the prompt here? Any ideas? All right, the answer here is Black male. All right, next one. .3D human image, not quite. The answer here is white male. Now, what's happening here, right? Because when we said Black, it meant Black and gave us back phenotypically Black people. When we said white, it gave us literally white people, right? And we're trying to unpack this now. I don't have a good answer for you yet. And we're thinking it might be some categorization in terms of base rates of categorizing race. White people tend not to categorize themselves as white. We actually collect some data on this, right? And so this is like self-categorization. When you ask people to describe themselves in 5 words, we counted were the first 5 words related to their race or ethnicity. And for white folks, it's about 3% of the time. For non-white people, we've done this a few times, about between 17 and 25% of the time. We get this difference, right? Where like they're more likely to basically describe themselves by their race category. We also see this is the case when we have people describe images. So that image I showed myself earlier, if I have someone describe it, they'll tend to put Black in it. If it's a white man in the image, they tend not to describe it as a white person, just as a person, or by what they're wearing. And so we can start to think about some of the categorization stuff that happens, then it's possible that what we're getting out of this is not a reflection of the world, right? But a reflection of the particular groups of humans that went into each of those triangles. So with the last 9 minutes, let's share what can we do, right? So what can we do to get a better handle of these systems? I think the first thing is to say to ourselves that like we can look in. Like I work with computer scientists now because there are limits to what I will ever know. But we can still take some of the same logic that we learned if you're a behavioral scientist or social psychologist to investigate some of these biases and stuff that happens within these systems. One way of doing that is the algorithm audit. And again, I have some links that I'll share so you can go look at the experts and algorithm audits and see, here's how we can get that done. But we can think of them basically as experiments, treat the platform as participants that allow us to see essentially who and like the human behavior inside each of those buckets. The other thing is, if you are a business person or you're someone that's deciding whether or not to adopt an AI product into your company, I'm trying to get people now to think about 3 questions. I'm calling this a mouthful, another 3D model of equitable tech adoption, but it's just 3 questions. And these 3 questions will also help you avoid a bunch of the AI hype. All right. The first question is, what does this thing actually do? Not like, what do you want it to do? What might it do in the future? Like, is this going to kill all of humanity? Like, what does it do today? All right. So like in the case of ChatGPT, right, it's a transformer that takes a bunch of text and gets some thing that feels like understandable text out. But it's not Wikipedia, it's not a search engine, right? It's not something you should be using to write your legal briefs, right? It doesn't do those things. And so we actually start to ask, what do these products do? All right, and only what they do, it helps us be more honest about what the outcome might be. The next question I try to get people to answer is, who does this disempower, right? Or conversely, who does this empower? That's what technology does, right? Tech gives people power, tech takes power away. And so we can start to think, does this disempower someone? Does it empower someone? I did some work with a company that does law enforcement tech. And this is a question I try to get their developers to ask, right? Is this going to empower police officers and give them more power? Or is this going to disempower individual police officers? Is it going to empower the communities they serve? Or is it going to disempower the communities they serve, right? We can think about a host of technology and whether or not it empowers, disempowers, and who that does that to. And then the last question is just, how is this going to be used daily, right? So something you'll see often, at least in the AI hype train, is people will say, this is the most extreme use case, right? Like, we're going to use this product in schools because it's going to stop mass shootings, right? Mass shootings are really bad, but mass shootings are also incredibly rare, right? So if we bring in some, I don't know, RoboCop style robot into schools to stop mass shootings, a mass shooting at your school is incredibly, incredibly rare, right? It's like a lightning strike, essentially. But if we have a robot that can kill students in a school, and like how it will get used daily if it's sitting there, I don't know. Are they going to use it to stop classroom disruptions, right? Are they going to use it when a kid raises his hand too much, right? So it's like, what is the daily use, not what is the most extreme use of this thing, right? And so if we ask ourselves these 3 questions, right? Like, it will help guide us as we are bringing this stuff inside of our companies or inside of our lives, right? And if you can't answer these questions before you roll out a product, don't roll it out. Like, at least, at the very least, ask yourselves these questions. All right, so as an overview, we got 2 models to help us think about AI, right? I'm not saying these are perfect models, but I do think that having thought models, or as we call them in the field, theoretical models, to help guide us in our thinking about things, like, really helps us understand what's happening. We played around with some thought models, we saw some art, and then we talked about what we could do, right? We can do algorithm audits. And if you want to do something, that's what we're doing in our lab, come hang out with me. And if you're a company, please ask yourself those 3 questions. What does this thing do? Who does this empower? How is it used daily? All right, so I'm going to pause here for any questions, comments, concerns. All right, let me read this. Chris Vanderrood said, I started to wonder if AI should adjust its output based on who the user is. Going back to those questions, with an A might be fine when delivered by a young person of color, but in my understanding, most of the time should not be coming from a white peer, teacher, police officer, or other authority figure. So if AI is, say, asked to write email, should have different outputs based on the cultural identity of the person sending the email, the person using the email, or are we helping the problem become more entrenched by asking it to do any level of customization based on such categorizations? Chris, that is a phenomenally good question. And those are like a series of empirical questions that I don't have an answer for yet, but we could answer this together. So I'm gonna leave then this shameless plug. Chris, let's answer this question. Hit me up at jointhetrap.com. And then for references on this talk, because I don't like to weigh my slides down with a bunch of academic references, you can go here. All the references that we talk about are there. And can you drop the link for easier access? 100%. Let me stop sharing and put this in the chat. All right. That's all I have. We got 2 minutes left. And this was fun. I feel like what's the investment in prevention? Kelvin, I'm not sure how to answer that question, but we can talk about that later. And Dennis, is there a question? Is there a hand raised? Do people come on mute? Oh, yeah. I don't know if the mute button worked. What's up, Dennis?
Hi. Well, firstly, thanks for this talk. It was really interesting. I guess this isn't a really direct question, but just interested in your thoughts on how much some of this is, how much some of this kind of need for regulation is a political question, in the sense that these are really big questions these are really big technological questions that we're leaving the responsibility in for individuals. Do you see this as a political problem? And you know, what are your comments around that?
It's definitely a political problem, right? There's a policy question here about even what data should go in, right? So like, I know the European Union is going through this now, basically trying to figure out, is it even legal for these companies to scrape all of your data? And what does copyright law look like in the wake of generative AI? The issue we have, though, is I think the part of it is the companies have a lot of power, right, in terms of what they can do, and there's very little self-policing. And so some of that work in policing gets left to folks like us, right? Like, I don't have a infinite budget, right? And so it's like, can we show holes in the system? Because it seems that the only way folks learn is through like close partnership, where they brought you inside the house, but that seems to not last that long, or in combativeness, right? Where you can say, hey, this system is trash, right? Like, here is the trashy outcome that came out of this. As an example of this, there is a product that Google has that you can put up an image, or you can ask for put a words in it, gives you image back. You put up an image and describes the image. But it had this connection between Black people and gorillas, right? And so you would put in the word gorilla, was a Black person, or you put up a gorilla and it would describe it as a Black person, right? That's a problem because Black people aren't gorillas. And so some researchers said, hey, Google, this is a problem. And Google said, okay, we'll fix it. And what do they do to fix it? They just basically turned off that request. So now if you try to use the word gorilla, it gives you nothing, right? It's like gorillas don't exist. They didn't change the algorithm, right? They're just like, oh, that's a lot of work to retrain this thing. So let's just turn off this prompt. So this prompt doesn't work, right? And you'll see that as well inside of like ChatGPT, right? So if you're one of the early like testers, you can get it to say all types of horrible things, right? And eventually some of that user feedback comes in to say like, let's turn off some of these prompts. And so maybe shame still works, right? Until we can get to the point where like we can teach our policymakers, like basically that they too can understand this stuff, right? part of the reason I try to simplify this to the point of y equals mx plus b is that then it gives the keys and the control back to our users, right? My goal is to get more people like the other side of the algo line, right? Not just being someone that the algorithm acts upon, right? But also being to say like, hey, this doesn't work, right? And so something else we're doing with this work, like this Facebook and YouTube work I showed you, is that we're making all of those videos public so you can go test it on any system, right? Go run this through anyone that has an active thumbnail selection algorithm. And if it's weird or if it's trash, tell them, right? Say this is bad. Right? And I wish that we had more teeth as like the downstream users of this stuff. But in the meantime, right, like, say more, right? Like speak up. If the AI is bad or you get some weird outcome, say this is weird, right? Like ring the bell. Until said time, we can get some real laws enacted that will protect more of us. Hope that answered your question, Dennis.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yeah, hey, Broderick, this is Kelvin. I didn't know the unmute button worked too, so I'm glad somebody. My question was related to the previous one, but I think, the reason why I asked, about prevention is because there's so much energy going into reaction. So I guess I'm just asking, what are your thoughts around strategies in prevention? Because, I mean, right now, of course, legislatively, right, there's lack in terms of how to, kind of either curb this, trend and on the one hand, excitement for it, but on the other hand, anxiety about it, right? Around AI. And then my second question is, what can we learn from how other countries are responding to this? And maybe get off our arrogant horse, right, as the United States, and actually listen and learn to other countries as they respond to this, around that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so two thoughts. The first is that as an educator, right, my bias is always that, like, if someone's going to build these systems, can I intervene as they're learning to build them? And basically teach them about humans, right? Like, I think some AI safety class should probably be part of any computer science curriculum, right? Or computer science safety, and not this idea that we're gonna create some killer AI that murders everybody 400 years from now. I'm talking about like safety today, right? Are the products that we're releasing safe for the masses of people? And are we considering the experience of humans that don't look like us? Right, like that in itself, I think would be extremely helpful. Right, engineers are incredibly bright and like amazing to work with on a lot of things, but sometimes that education around how this like humans will use their product, right, or what the human element is lacking, and that's some work that can be done now inside of engineering schools, inside of business schools, right, for people that are going to actually set the rules for this stuff. In terms of legislation, I think in Europe, they're doing a much better job of trying to protect their customers and their constituents, right? But this has been the case for a lot of things, right? Same thing with California, though, right? So some of the concerns around like net neutrality got clipped because California enacted legislation like immediately. And so what California does, kind of the rest of the country does, right? That's the same for, say, the chemicals that go into your food, right? And so like some of this, again, is just an education where like you should not think that these things are magic, because they're not, right? They're just tools. And they're powerful tools, right? But they're just tools that I think anyone can start to understand. And if anyone can start to understand them, then we can all make noise together and say these should be better. These should treat us better. These shouldn't be as dark.